One of the things I think that's often overlooked, we can learn a lot from other fields and how those fields have progressed. And if we think back on how medicine was transformed with the advent of the CAT scan or the MRI, if we go into the hospital today, there's almost no procedure that we have or our kids have that isn't impacted by a CAT scan. I mean, it used to be that you have to cut people open to figure out what was wrong with them, and now we look back, that was only maybe 15, 20 years ago, and it seems like the dark ages of medicine. And a lot of times when the public or teachers hear about cyber learning or educational technology, they're worried that they're going to be disenfranchised, that it's going to push teachers out of the classroom or make their jobs very menial. And I actually think if we look at how the CAT scan or the MRI transformed medicine, it didn't drive physicians out of medicine, it empowered them with new tools to understand how the body is working or what the disease was. And I think that's the analogy we need to look for cyber learning, which is really empowering teachers with better tools to understand what's happening with their students, how to best intervene, and really sort of professionalizing the role of the teacher with these new powerful tools.
One big change I see is when I started out in this field, computer media were the medium by which we were trying to do educational things. They were a new way of teaching, of getting kids to maybe understand things. Now they've become, I'm sort of channeling Marshall McLuhan here, they become part of the message because they're no longer just the way to do the education about these other things. They're part of what kids need to learn. So they're part of the medium. So the major idea that kids need to actually create the media themselves and learn how to use computational media as part of understanding the domain. They're now integral. So that's one major shift I see now that we need to take on into the future.
There's this common theme I'm seeing about lowering the threshold. We're getting to a point in technological capabilities that a lot of youth are able to make things, and they want to make more things, and I think this is a form of empowerment for them to do so, and we're seeing that that's being recognized, and technology's really focused on the learning and the potential for learning by means of building and by making, and that's a very exciting thing to me, that we're coming into a greater alignment with what has already been picked up by the youth and society as a whole.
Traditionally, educational researchers have been trying to apply a traditional experimental model to their evaluations of education, and that hasn't worked too well. We have a history of no significant differences. There's a new method, and I suspect most of the people presenting here use this method, although they really haven't explicitly said so, and that's design-based research or educational design research, whatever you want to call it. And it's really where you work closely with practitioners to define a problem, develop a prototype solution to that problem, go through multiple iterative testing of the solution to that problem, and then hopefully solve the problem, but also identify reusable design principles that others can use in their work.
I think it opens up the new doors. It's a different way of seeing education. We do movies, we do all kinds of stuff that actually depend on media and technology, and we have to teach our kids how to do it and how to become savvy about it and how to become safe about it. Instead of hiding technology from there, we have to open up those doors.
Because not only do we need to understand from a graphic perspective how to design materials to be supported, but from within the technology where those materials are embedded, how do we also scaffold learners as they're using these representations to be able to understand them? So just because we use the media to create really interesting, flashy, impressive looking materials, that doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be understandable by learners. So what are the surrounding resources and materials we need to put around that within the technology to help students make sense of all of those visualizations and other kinds of media-rich representations? And so I think down the line, as we see things like tablets, smartphones, as we see that trajectory of device, which will probably just get more powerful, thinner, to the point where maybe we even see, I think Elliot showed, almost computational paper. I think that's the direction we're going, and it'll probably be a medium that allows for richer media representations. So having an understanding how to design those and how to put layers of scaffolding around them so that people make sense of them are important. And that's what triggered that in me.
As a community of scientists, I was very impressed today with our ability to tell the story of the research we're doing. And I think this is critically important. We can't just teach people content knowledge. We need to be salesmen for STEM. We need to really promote it, not only to students, but to teachers, to society at large, so that the resources we actually need, that they understand we need them to promote STEM in the United States. So I was very impressed with the storytelling, the compelling presentations that just kept my attention. We need to do more of that, and we needed to be very creative storytellers, learn from Hollywood, learn from filmmakers, learn from comedians, learn from people that really make you get your attention and then make you think.
I work in South Central in a really difficult part of LA, and the only way in which we can reach our kids in that specific population is by things that are being innovative. And Cyberlearning, what it does is it engages those kids that normally wouldn't be engaged with anything else, and it's just their way of life. That's how they've been raised, and even though they might not have the technology at their hands, they see it everywhere else. You know, they could see it from their neighbor, or maybe somebody else stole it from somebody else. But I mean, that's just what they do, and you have to engage students in order for them to learn and get them out of those situations in which they're in.
The number one take home for me is that this community is not technology first, it's learner first. I think that came across in almost every talk, that it is truly not just to build cool things, you know, that we like, but there is a real empirical focus. There's an interest in what's going on cognitively, what's going on emotionally, and that's learner-centered, and that's what we need to be doing, and I like that.
Last night I happened to have dinner with a principal of a high school here in the DC area. And I told him I was coming to this, and he said that in his mind, the two biggest problems are that students aren't learning to be self-directed, and they're not learning to be generative in terms of taking knowledge that's presented to them and then using it to solve other problems and so forth. Well, the things I've seen here today are really promising in terms of meeting those two challenges. There's so many opportunities that people are creating for students to create their own original knowledge representations and to reuse and repurpose information and data in ways that they not only learn, that might serve others. So it's really exciting.